Well, good evening, Cedar Falls. Welcome to our regular council meeting for June 20th, 2023, here on a Tuesday night due to the Juneteenth holiday yesterday. I'll now call this meeting to order with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Schultz.
Here.
DeBoer.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Ganfield.
Here.
Sayers.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And if you would please join me, if willing and able, for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first item tonight is approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the regular meeting of June 5th?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Any from the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That does pass. And Madam Clerk, do we have any agenda revisions tonight?
Mayor, we will be pulling item 34 of the agenda.
Okay, so item 34 is that resolution approving and authorizing execution of a Consolidated Public Safety Communications 28E agreement with participating government agencies. So that is being withdrawn from the agenda tonight. I do plan on having that item forward on our July 17th meeting. So with that, we have special presentations tonight. Mr. Spencer Lubert, if you would come forward, please. Let's go around this way. Turn that way. Good to see you, Spencer.
Good to see you.
So we're very honored to have you here with us tonight. And if we could have you come forward as well. We'll have our presentation for you first. So Spencer is celebrating now 24 years of service as a Cedar Falls Human Rights Commissioner. He began his service in July of 1999 and is finishing up his service time June of this year. So this is his final month of service, but an amazing tenure that you've had on Human Rights Commission. It made such an enormous difference with the fabric of our community and how we see ourselves. So I want to give you a great congratulations.
Thank you.
Your work. And certainly, yeah, please, round of applause. I don't want to steal any thunder here, so I will certainly go ahead and if you'd like to speak as well for our Human Rights Commission Chair, I'll just hold this for you. So go right ahead.
Okay, I just want to share a few things since I've served on the commission for you for a little bit, Spencer. So I met Spencer through the HRC, and it was a pretty small group when I started. And you know, being on there and being new, I had a lot to learn. And at one time I was giving a talk about diversity. And you know what that's like when you give a talk and you kind of scan the room and you look at the different faces. And some people are just staring at you. Somebody might be on their phone. And then when I was talking about diversity, I got to Spencer and I got, yeah. And I always will remember that, and I always will appreciate that. And I love the thumbs up, and I always will miss the way to go, kiddo. Keep going at it, kiddo. Good job, kiddo. He was always encouraging and always trying to smooth things out, and he's just a really genuinely good person. When I first started, interestingly enough, I brought up term limits at that time, and as a longtime member, he supported me. And I know now why, because he wanted a break. He was ready. He was ready to go. So to quote Michael Corleone, he said, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. And this time, sir, we're going to let you leave, but I'm going to tell you that you are still my personal consigliere, and thank you for your service, because you've just been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's your choice if you'd like to say something or not.
I just want to say thank you for your support and allowing me to serve.
Wonderful. Thank you again. So that was special presentations for tonight, and I do have a request for council, similar to what we did previously. I have what may be our last proclamation, so item 11, non-controversial proclamations. I request that if I can read two of them, please. It's item 11. So does council object if we vote on those first, just to have them, so I can read the two? Okay, so the item 11 is approving proclamations recognizing June 19th, 2023 as Juneteenth Freedom Day, July 2023 as Disability Pride Month, and then July 11th as 133rd Infantry Regiment Ironman Battalion Day, which we do each year. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, or any from the public? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. So that lets me read these two proclamations. So the Juneteenth proclamation, I apologize for. I had my dates wrong, and I was thinking of June as having the Monday on the 17th. I'm like, oh yes, the 19th, not a problem. We'll have it first. It's on the Wednesday. Missing the month. So that's why it's totally my fault, mea culpa. I'm reading Juneteenth Freedom Day on the day after Juneteenth, but it's that important that we read it. I did not want to miss the date. But the proclamation says, whereas the President and the Congress of the United States have declared a national holiday to commemorate the day of June 19th, 1865, when Union General Gordon Granger and a contingent of Union soldiers brought news of emancipation to Galveston, Texas. And whereas this was 2.5 years after Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which became official on January 1st, 1863. And whereas today, Juneteenth Freedom Day celebrates African American freedom and achievement while encouraging continuous self-development and respect for all cultures, as it takes on a more national, symbolic, and even global perspective to ensure that the events of 1865 are not forgotten. And whereas Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration commemorating the abolition of slavery in the United States, dating back to June 19th, 1865, when Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, with news that the war was ended, freeing the enslaved. And whereas the city of Cedar Falls wishes to join the national government in setting aside a day for commemoration of liberty and equality for all citizens. And whereas embracing Juneteenth as a holiday encourages community reflection on unity and on the promotion of racial understanding and healing. Now therefore, I, Robert M. Green, Mayor of Cedar Falls, acting in the name of the Cedar Falls City Council and the Cedar Falls Human Rights Commission, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2023 as Juneteenth Freedom Day in Cedar Falls, and I encourage all citizens to actively recognize and celebrate this national commemoration which honors the legacy, history, and culture of African Americans. Signed this 19th day of June, 2023, Mayor Robert M. Green. So this is yours.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our second proclamation then is Disability Pride Month. And it says, whereas Disability Pride Month is celebrated in July to acknowledge that the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the ADA, was signed into law on July 26, 1990. And whereas nearly 1 in 4 people have a disability, and people with disabilities make tremendous contributions to Cedar Falls' art, culture, and economy. And whereas people with disabilities are valued and vibrant members of Cedar Falls, and whereas people with disabilities are diverse and have intersectional identities, as well as sharing a community and culture that is built around their lived experiences. And whereas Cedar Falls acknowledges the long history of isolation and discrimination against citizens with disabilities and recognizes the decades of activism and advocacy by the disability community. And whereas Cedar Falls acknowledges that celebrating culture, community, and the ADA is only a starting point, and there remains significant room for progress toward full and equitable access and inclusion for all citizens with disabilities. Now, therefore, I, Robert M. Green, acting in the name of the Cedar Falls City Council and the Human Rights Commission, do hereby proclaim the month of July 2023 in Cedar Falls, Iowa, as Disability Pride Month. Signed this 20th day of June 2023. Mayor Robert M. Green. So thank you again for bringing this forward for the council to consider and display them proudly. Thank you.
And just want to thank you. Just want to thank you for the Juneteenth, for the acknowledgement of the day and our history and our current presence. And for the Disability Pride Month also, just really want to say that the HRC wants to hear more if there's concerns around disabilities. When we deal with all marginalized groups, but sometimes that's maybe one that we don't hear enough from, so we can be more active and helpful. So thank you, Mayor, for both of these.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your indulgement, Council, and this will bring us back to our regular schedule here. We'll now have a public forum opportunity where speakers will have one chance to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics relevant to city business. Does anyone from the public wish to speak in public comment tonight, or public forum? Just provide name and city, and that's it. We're not looking for street addresses anymore.
We're not doing addresses anymore?
Just the city the council has asked for.
Tammy Stahl, Cedar Falls.
Thank you, ma'am.
Intelligence is learning from others' mistakes and successes. Last Tuesday, June 6th, I was leaving a meeting in Waterloo and was given heads up there was a rescue going on in downtown Cedar Falls. This was the direction I was going home. I pulled over at the park and got out to watch the rescue. There I found Chief Bostwick on the phone. I found out he was on the phone assisting with the river rescue of 2 people. How wonderful and perfect for all. I then discovered he was not asked to be there and assist. He was only there because of an act of God. He happened to be riding his bike and came upon the incident. He watched the attempted boat rescue, then the water rescue attempt, only then calling one of the public safety workers, suggesting they needed to be on the bridge, cut a hole in the fence, and rappel down for the rescue. After all was over, I asked Chief B how he knew to do this. He said he knew those waters from being in them from other rescues. This is what he knew, this is what they needed to do for success. Later, I learned that Chief Bostwick, or that Chief Howard, Birdie, nor Zolendak were at the rescue. Why was Chief B not called if they couldn't be there? I was told that this rescue was not considered important enough. It didn't seem that way to all of us watching from the sidelines. Days later, I found out that Chief B was never acknowledged by any public safety or city officials for his assistance. I then got to thinking, is there any plan in place for his top-notch 43 years of service, of experience that our city is paying for? There should be a plan to utilize his expertise during every hour of every shift. But I would guess there is none. I would even guess our public safety officer, or public safety administrators would do anything to never contact him, likely even being upset God led him to assist in the rescue of the 2 kayakers and keeping safe the officers. This got me thinking about something that happened to my husband, Dr. Saul, and myself the week before. Like it was, I believe, the morning of June 10th at about 2:30 a.m. We were sound asleep when there was pounding on our door and yells to answer the door. We were in such a sound sleep, it was shocking and alarming. I woke and went to the door to see a light shining in and yells to open the door. I did not open it right away, but yelled for Jerry, who took longer to wake up. I then asked who was there and was told it was the police. I did not open the door until Jerry arrived. It was very dark, but we could then see indeed it was the police. We were told there had been a report of teens fighting at our home. We assured them there were no teens in our house and we were not fighting. Both the police officer, my husband, and I were polite to each other. The next morning, we discussed the visit and put it off as a mistake and tried to put it out of our minds. After thinking about all that happened with the rescue, the way our fire chief was forced into retirement for being a whistleblower, the way firemen were treated for getting overpay compared to police officers that were overpaid and allowed to work overtime to pay back their overpay. Two police
1 minute remaining.
two police people were promoted, and the fire chief was forced into retirement. Friday, June 16th, I decided I needed to look into the middle of the night interruption. At about 11 a.m., I called public safety office and got the receptionist. I explained the situation and asked for a CAD report regarding this visit. I was told there was no such call that evening or even that weekend in our vicinity or anywhere she could find. I suggested that the visit could have been an accident or some unusual reason. Could she check with the officers on duty? I was told she would not check. I ended up emailing Bertie Rogers, Gaines, and Cruz. Bertie said he looked to June 1st and could not see any requests going even that far back, in case I was mistaken, and that my request was not so easy to answer. He would have.
You're at time, but I'm going to provide 1 additional minute.
Thank you. How would there not be a report of beating on a person's door in the middle of the night? Mr. Howard did respond Monday that there was a mistake Monday, and somebody accidentally came to our door. The problem is not that somebody came to our door. The problem is that there is no immediate record of this happening. All the things that happened, I think it is very important. I want to know the protocol in place for the use of our former fire chief and consultants. Starting on June 6th, was there any protocol in place? Is there any protocol in place then and going forward? I think it's a complete waste of our tax dollars. And what's going to be done about it if there's no protocol in place to utilize his services?
Thank you, Ms. Stahl. You were at time. Thank you. And I'll allow for Director Bertie, if you might be in the best position to respond. And you may have a seat, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, could she have another minute to finish, please?
I'd like that too, if she's not done.
Additional time?
Yes.
A minute.
I can't guarantee it's an additional minute. So all in favor of providing additional time, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. How much time does council want to provide her?
2 minutes.
Council,
I'd
how
also-
much time, excuse me, how much time does council wish to provide? 2 minutes, okay?
2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes is fine.
I would also like an answer to if police officers were allowed to do overtime to pay for overpay, and why the firemen were not allowed that opportunity, and what happened to the police chief that was in office when that took place, and why would there be no protocol in place for even accidental knocking on somebody's door in the middle of the night? I think that we would deserve to have an answer to that, and if you called, why staff wouldn't be required to look into our requests. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So to Director Bertie?
Oh, that was a lot of questions, but I can answer a few of them. In terms of the water rescue on the Cedar River, that water rescue went as planned. They attempted with boats. They eventually did a high-angle rope rescue off the bridge. Captain Derek Brown, Captain Shay McNamara were in charge that night. That's just standard work for them. They didn't need Chief. They talked to Chief Zlondek. They talked to me, but they didn't need us at scene. We wouldn't go out for something like that unless we're needed. They absolutely did not need the assistance of Chief Boswick, nor did he help them with that rescue. So they did the rescue on their own with the equipment provided from up on First Street. It was also a rescue of people, standing in water who can swim with life vests on. But the trouble was you couldn't get there with a boat because there was rocks. There was an area where it was too low, so it would hit the propellers on the boat, but yet you couldn't get there with lines walking because it got too deep. It was about neck high. So they got to him from up above with a rope. So everything went good. It took a long time, as a rope rescue should take. You want to do it methodically and just take the time and do it. And they've done rescues like that from bridges before, the fire department has. Derek Brown and Shay McNamara were both trained by John Boswick for decades. Derek Brown has worked with John Boswick for decades, so Derek Brown knows what he's doing. On the other one, we did have an officer that accidentally went to Miss Stahl's house for a fight in progress. They went to the wrong address. The thing that made it complicated when she called in was she wasn't sure of the date that it happened, and she's talking to our front office staff, which is a college student, and it was a request that really should have went to either some of our administrators or a shift commander. So that's on us. That employee should have, as that request got complicated, trying to find a call that didn't occur really in the computers, as that request got complicated, that front office staff person should have referred her to an administrator or to a shift commander who could have researched it. And I'll use a comparison. We get a call lots of times on you get a Monday morning where somebody was injured in a fight in Cedar Falls at 1, 2, 3 in the morning on Saturday night, which is actually Sunday morning. They don't know where they were. And so sometimes those take a while to figure out where was the address that happened, where was the actual address, or ambulance calls and things like that. So the fault that we had there is that we should have got it to somebody who knew more of the information, could have researched the call better. Over the weekend, Chief Howard did find the call. We did get it from one of the officers and supervisors that worked that weekend night.
Okay.
And any questions about Chief Boswick's contract are really legal questions that I can't answer. So.
Okay, thank you. And so Ms. Dahl apologized for that mistake from the city.
It was not a problem at all that they came to the door. That was doing their job, and I appreciate them coming to the door.
Yeah, well, I apologize for the makes up afterward for the communication. So, does anyone else have comments from the public for tonight? Okay, seeing none. Now I'll move us over to staff updates. Mr. Gaines, is there anything that you want to pass tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask Director Birdie if he'll go ahead and give us a little bit of an update on our efforts to inform the public of what we're doing for the July 4th celebration and the legal hours to celebrate. So,
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Director Birdie.
So just real quickly on fireworks again. So the City Council voted that fireworks will be allowed 2 days this year. It's July 3rd from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., July 1st from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. Chief Howard and Chief Zlondek and their staffs have been trying to spread that word in many ways as they can. I know the chiefs have done KWWL interviews. They've done a Steel Report interview, a Courier interview, News at Noon interview, and they've done radio spots. Chief Howard's over today doing a radio spot. Chief Zlondek's people are doing inspections of the sale sites as they start selling fireworks. They're providing them signs and pamphlets that'll go out with every sale, reminding people of Cedar Falls hours. We've got neighborhood signs that'll go up this year. They're bigger than last year, different colors, so they don't blend in with the fireworks signs, hopefully as much as last year. And like I said, pamphlets are going out with every fireworks purchase. And then we're going to do the same as previous years, zero tolerance enforcement. We have extra people that are going to be out enforcing the fireworks ordinance, trying to keep the use during those legal hours. And it's a simple misdemeanor up to a $250 fine, and there's a mandatory court appearance required. So we had good success with it last year. We hope it gets better this year, and we're doing all the efforts that we can. There's other media efforts that we're doing to spread the word too, but those are just some of them I can think of right now.
Thank you. Yeah, the challenge for us is that last year and the year previous, it was a municipal infraction. And so we were able to handle that internally without it going to court. Now, because of the way the state law is written, if someone is cited, it is a court appearance and is a criminal offense. We wish it wasn't the case. If we could not do that, I certainly would rather have the municipal infraction and keep it as simple as possible. But that's where we're at with the state. Other comments or notes for tonight? Blood drive? You want to mention that?
I can mention blood drive. Wednesday, the 28th, blood drive at Public Safety. You can sign up online for it. It's through the American Red Cross.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll note this Friday at the Sturgis Falls celebration, the Overman Park band shell. It's at 12:30. Astronaut Raja Chari will just have finished up a presentation to young people. He's here in town. That's part of what NASA requires him to do, is give these presentations. Perfect opportunity for us to present the key to the city to him as well. Certainly, he'll be our first recipient of the key to the city, which is very exciting. So having that in place will be a great civic event, and I hope that you can attend and join us for that. So with that, no more staff updates? Okay, thank you. I have one more request from council, if you'll indulge me, about boards and commissions appointments. So on the consent calendar, item 10 is approving recommendations for boards and commissions. And just as last meeting, if we can approve these, then we can have them come forward, and they don't have to stay for the entire meeting if they don't want to. So with that, on the consent calendar, item 10 is approving the following recommendations of the mayor relative to the appointment of members to boards and commissions. A, Jeannie Weekly. B, for Human Rights Commission. B, Jason Drost for Human Rights Commission. C, Maddie Seymour for Human Rights Commission. And D, Tyler Ingram for Human Rights Commission as well. So all Human Rights Commissioners. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded, and I'll just open it up for the group. If you have, I guess if all the commissioners want to come forward, we've not had to do all of them, or whoever's here. So I know Jason Drost is in Europe right now and couldn't attend. Okay, well, come on up, Madeline. It's not required as part of the approvals, but we do like to have, you don't have to come way up, just right up to the podium. This is a chance just to get to say hello and for the council to meet you. So if you can just give a 30-second infomercial about your excitement for Human Rights Commission.
Absolutely. I'm Maddie Seymour, Cedar Falls resident. I'm very excited to start serving and doing what I can to hopefully make some efforts to improve and keep improving upon Cedar Falls and everyone's experience here. So thank you. Nice to meet you all, and it'll be great.
Okay, thank you, Madeline. Any questions for Madeline from council or comments? Okay, thank you so much for your willingness to serve. I really enjoyed our phone conversation the other day. Your energy will be fantastic for the group.
Thank you.
So any other questions or concerns? Any from the public? We always open it up. All
Mr.
right.
Mayor,
Yes, please.
I would just request, could I handle 10D separately?
Okay. So this will be for items, for item 10, A through C. Is there a motion to, okay, so we
There's
did
already
the
moved,
motion
yep.
to approve. So just to vote on 1 or 10, A through C. So it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so those pass, and that takes us to 10D for T.W. Ingham, Human Rights Commission term ending 7/1/2024. I think we have the motion to approve, so we're in discussion. Councilor Ganfield.
Yeah, I don't want to rail about it, but it is one of those opportunities where, just to state our personal opinion, I've had some observation of past candidacy, and I'm not certain that this is the best fit for all human rights.
Okay. All right, any other comments from council? Okay, that's why we're here, weigh in on these choices. So moved and seconded. Any from the public discussion on this 10D? Okay, then all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so that does pass and puts us back into our normal calendar. So thank you so much for coming tonight. You're welcome to stay for the entire meeting if you like. Bob Seymour's her dad, by the way. We wouldn't want you to get fun poisoning. All right, so that takes us over to special order business, item 2, which is a public hearing on the proposed amendment to a future land use map by changing the designation from low density residential to neighborhood commercial and mixed use on the proposed rezoning from C1 Commercial Zoning District to PC2 Planned Commercial Zoning District of property located at 702 LeClaire Street. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. That passes. Madam Clerk, do we have any written communications on file?
I have no written communications on file.
Thank you, ma'am. And moving into item 2C is staff comments with JD. If you'd like to provide some information, Mr. Secretary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you, Council. Good evening, all. So this is a case for land use map amendment from low density residential use to neighborhood commercial and mixed use, and a rezoning request from C1 to PC2. This is for a property at 702 LeClaire, which is located on the northwest corner of 1st and LeClaire Street. Two items. One is to amend the future land use map to reflect the current commercial uses on the property and rezone the property from C1 to PC2 district. Just the background, this is a lot 21 of the Starview subdivision, platted in 1950. There was the first office building in 65. Wholesale business are usually not allowed in the C1 district, so the current use is non-conforming. There was another 3,600 square feet of building, a warehouse storage building that was added on site in 2011. To adapt to changing business uses, including supply chain issues, applicant is proposing to add another 7,000 square feet of warehouse space. The existing storage on site exceeds what is allowed, which is why the applicant is requesting to rezone the property from C1 to PC2. PC2 zoning, PC2 district requires submittal of a master plan and a development procedure agreement that basically drives the planned development on this site. And this is the, you can see the master plan proposed for this site on your screen. PC2 district does allow wholesale warehouse uses, but also prohibits motor freight terminal use. I think I just want to make note of that. The proposed master plan shows existing building and the proposed building setback information, stormwater basin, landscape screening for buffers, as well as the proposed access point for this site. With regard to public service, it is located in a developed area of the city, so it does have all access to all utilities and public service. About access to street network, this is accessed from Leclerc Street. The traffic volume here has been local delivery pickup trucks for about 3 times per week and 2-3 semis per week. Applicant has indicated that this will remain unchanged with the proposal of the new storage building on site. One other thing that we look at when we rezone is to check compliance with the comprehensive plan and future land use map. The subject property, as highlighted on the screen with a star, and the 2 properties to the east are currently zoned C1 and are designated as low-density residential. The changing the area highlighted entirely in that blue boundary from low-density residential to neighborhood commercial mixed use will align with the long-term and the low-intensity commercial uses existing on the properties. And this amendment will also make the current and the proposed zoning compliant and consistent with the future land use map and comprehensive plan. With that, staff recommends an applicant has agreed to put some of the conditions in the development agreement that will be driving the master plan at the site, which is to restrict the allowed use to wholesale business use and associated warehouse space, limiting square footage of the building, as well as limiting the access drive. And staff makes note about that the intensity and the scale of this business shall not increase to a level that it becomes a prohibited use in this district. And if there is any further development on the site, a public sidewalk will be required to put in. And also wants to note that any additional development other than what is shown on the master plan would require planning and zoning and city council review. So those can be discussed at that time. Development agreement was attached in the packet for more reference. And with that, Planning and Zoning Commission made recommendation to approve this with vote of 7-0 at the May 24th meeting to amend the future land use map from low-density residential to neighborhood commercial and mixed use, and the request to rezone the property at 702 Leclerc from C1 to PC2. Subject to the conditions in the development agreement and the master plan. So thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have. We also have applicant and the owner here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ardera. Before we go to council questions, do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak on the item? Yes, Ms. Stahl?
Tammy Stahl, Cedar Falls. I live just adjacent to where they want to make these changes. And I want to remind people, we just had a development go in next to us. We were strong-armed. It was pulling teeth to get people to do a water study. We had to threaten lawyers to get appropriate studies done. And then it took everything we could do to see the studies. And this happened over and over because the studies weren't big enough. And then once we saw the studies, we saw the studies weren't adequate. So there had to be new studies. I was told that if we wanted to have more research done, that I could get a petition together. I took a week to do that, got on the agenda. I was told how to do a petition, that it was all on the Cedar Falls webpage. When I did it, I was told at the city council meeting 2 minutes before it started that my proposal or my petition wasn't adequate and that I didn't follow the rules. And I said I followed every rule on the city webpage, and they said, oh, there are additional rules that aren't on the webpage. Darn. The water that comes through our street is terrible. We haven't had as many rains the past few years, but there in the lot next to me, there was a ravine that was like 40 feet long, 11 feet deep, and 11 feet wide from the water that came down our street, going from First Street to LeClaire and down Lakeshore Drive and into the lot next to us. You allowed the lot to be filled in before changes were made to our street to accept the water. So now it goes through our yard. And now you want to add more. You want to do another development on Union Road. You've taken out the water retention area, and you want to do this along with the creek in the area that is eroding and falling in, and the water going into our pond that we just spent $20,000 to $25,000 per household to redo. And I think it's time. You promised, Stephanie Sheets, that our road would be redone so that it could accept the water that was going in. But now the more building that's done, the more asphalt will be there and the more runoff there will be. And I think it's time to follow through with some of the promises made to us before additional building is done, and we're required to accept more water.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Is anyone else from the public wish to speak on the item? Okay, seeing none, then I'll consider the public hearing closed and take us over to the council, where this is item 2E, resolution approving an amendment to the future land use map by changing the designation from low-density residential to neighborhood commercial and mixed use of property located at 702 LeClaire Street. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council questions. Councilmember DeBoer?
Just looking at this map that was in the packet, it shows a proposed stormwater detention basin. So is this development's being required to do their own stormwater, it looks like? Am I correct in how I'm reading that?
Yes, they are required because it triggers the stormwater ordinance, yes.
Okay, and the only new concrete, other than maybe under the building, is that little driveway extension?
Yes, that is.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other questions?
Other questions from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Ganfield.
Sure. I guess I'm just looking to find out, how did this initially get in there as a non-conforming issue? I guess the concern in my mind is this is something that wasn't conforming with the code, and we're going to move code to accommodate. I'm not, I don't want to play favorites or anything. I also don't want to evict a business that's been successful. But how did it get to this situation to begin with?
I can't answer for that. I think this business has been there for, as I said, the first building on this site was in 1965. So they have been operating this business for decades. I don't know the reason why it reached to this level, but they were trying to add more to continue the existing business. So which is why we thought it would be easy to rezone to make sure it's compliant. So.
Okay, thank you.
So I think historically this was Higbee Hardware. Is that the location that I'm?
No, it's to the west.
To
This
the
is
west
just
of
to
that?
the west across the driveway.
Okay.
Let's try comments to the chair, please.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cruz. Sorry, long day.
Can we elaborate on the speaker's comments about the water flow going down, and then are we because I know this area fairly well, it's in my ward. I've visited with some of the people there concerned about the flow of water, and we got a detention pond, but in a heavy rain, that'll overflow and then goes downhill. And I understand there's going to be an upsizing of Lakeview Street or Lake Street, whatever the street's called there. I forget the name of it, but I understand that's in the works. If we could get a time frame on that.
Director Sheets, would you have any information about that street?
I could probably better answer that question.
Sorry.
So the first one being stormwater ordinance is specifically set up to the water that releases the site will not be any faster than in its current state. So we will not leave the site any faster than it currently leaves
Before the
site
build?
today. Correct.
Okay.
In regards to LeClaire Street and street upgrades, I do not have that in front of me unless Mr. Wiki knows that, but I can get that information to you.
It goes down around.
Correct.
It changes
Down to the
name,
north.
doesn't it?
All the way to the dead end to the north.
And that's Leclerc all the way, I think.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, other questions, comments from council?
Lakeshore Drive. It does change. Okay.
Okay, if no other questions or comments, then what we have on the floor is that resolution approving an amendment to the future land use map by changing the designation from low residential to neighborhood commercial and mixed-use property at property located at 702 LeClaire Street. Motion is moved and approved and requires a roll call vote.
Where do we move to? Okay, what am I doing here? I gotta hit one of these meetings. Oh, there we go.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that does pass, and it takes us to item 3, which is passing an ordinance amending the zoning map by removing approximately 2.26 acres of property located at 702 LeClaire Street from the C1 Commercial Zoning District and placing the same in the PC2 Planned Commercial Zoning District upon its first consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
The moved and seconded. Open for council discussion. Questions? Seeing none. Open to the public for comments. Okay, seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Six aye and 1 nay, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That does pass also and requires 2 additional approvals in the next 2 meetings to take effect. So that'll bring us over to item 4, which is a public hearing on proposed amendments to Chapter 26 zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to allowance of vinyl siding on certain residential buildings in the neighborhood frontages within the CD/DT Downtown Character District. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, none. So that does pass and takes us over to staff comments with Ms. Karen Howard. Floor is yours, ma'am.
Okay, good evening. This was a city council petition to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The petition was that in the neighborhood frontages of the Downtown Character District to consider allowing vinyl siding on any new single-family dwelling and consider allowing vinyl siding on other small residential buildings with 6 or fewer dwelling units. These would be duplexes, townhomes, apartment buildings. This is an image of the Downtown Character District Regulating Plan. To give you an idea where these ordinances would apply are the blue areas, both to the west of downtown and to the south, the darker blue to the south. These are the neighborhood frontages of the Downtown Character District. So a little bit of background, the previous Central Business District Overlay Zoning District did not allow vinyl siding for commercial mixed use and multi-unit buildings containing more than 6 units. For residential neighborhoods outside the Central Business District, there were previously no standards for exterior cladding to the buildings. The current Downtown Character District Code prohibits use of vinyl siding in the Urban General 2, and storefront areas. Those are the main downtown core. The council did not discuss referring anything for the downtown core, but we're concerned more about the neighborhood areas surrounding downtown. So in the neighborhood frontage areas, currently in the downtown code, the vinyl siding is allowed on any existing single-family dwelling, even if it's not currently clad in vinyl. So somebody has an existing house and it's wood, they can clad it in vinyl. And also for any existing buildings with vinyl siding, they can replace the siding, repair the siding, or if they put any additions on the building, they can clad that in vinyl as well. I'm not going to go through this, but there was quite a bit of discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission prior to the downtown ordinance being approved on the pros and cons of this prohibition on certain buildings having vinyl siding. Concerns about the environmental impacts of vinyl siding long-term, but also talked about the pro of reducing the upfront costs from vinyl siding. So on May 24th, the Planning and Zoning Commission considered the City Council petitions. These are the options that the Commission considered. They considered whether to just recommend no change to the current ordinance or to amend to allow vinyl siding on all single-unit dwellings in the neighborhood frontages, or to amend to allow vinyl siding on all residential buildings with 6 or fewer units, as requested by the Council. Those 2 and 3 were the petition from the Council. And number 4, if the Commission wanted any other combination, anything else that they would recommend to the Commission related to this particular issue. So after discussion, after public hearing, P&Z made 3 different recommendations, or 2 recommendations, and then they did not consider the very first one on the screen here. They did not recommend approval of Council's petition to amend the zoning code to allow vinyl siding on residential buildings with 6 or fewer dwelling units in the neighborhood frontage areas. So that particular ordinance is on your agenda tonight. It would take a 2/3 majority Council to approve. There was a motion on the floor and it was seconded, and the Commission did discuss it. After discussion, they felt like that went too far, and so that motion was withdrawn in favor of a compromise. So on a vote of 5-2, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of an amendment to allow vinyl siding on all single-unit and 2-unit dwellings, duplexes, in the neighborhood frontage areas. And they also then voted separately on the specific Council petition on single-unit dwellings as well. So on a vote of 6-1, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of Council's petition to allow vinyl siding on all single-unit dwellings, new and existing. So just one note that on all existing buildings that currently have vinyl siding, that siding may be replaced or repaired with vinyl, and any additions may be clad in vinyl. So regardless of the vote tonight, that's currently in the ordinance and will remain. So I took the time to divide this into 3 different slides. There's 3 different ordinances on the agenda tonight. So this just might help guide the discussion, but it's up to you on how you want to proceed. There are 3 different ordinances. If you pass the first ordinance, item number 4, the second 2 you won't have to go there because they would be covered under the first one. Similarly, if you go to the second ordinance that's on the agenda and pass that ordinance, you wouldn't need to consider the third one because that would also be covered by the one that was considered and approved. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Howard. Before going to that, do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak on the item? Vinyl siding. Okay, seeing none, then I'll consider the public hearing closed. And this is interesting. We have 3 options here. If council is okay with it, I'd like to have us take a vote on the first one, which is the most, requires the highest threshold. If that one passes, then we don't have to discuss the other ones. Does that make sense? Yep. So kind of see where we go from there. So I'll entertain a motion to pass ordinance amending Chapter 26, zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to allowance of vinyl siding on residential buildings with 6 or fewer dwelling units in the neighborhood frontages within the CDOT Downtown Character District upon its first consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And this one would be 5 aye votes required due to denial by the planning, or recommended denial by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So open up for council questions or discussion. Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. Looking at this, the missing middle market section of housing, applying a desire to have new missing middle, the medium-sized 4-unit, 5-unit, 6-unit buildings. If we restrict and don't allow the developers to use vinyl siding, you drive up the cost of developing by many thousands of dollars. And then it becomes not affordable housing any longer. The developer has to have more money to make it profitable, break even, and make money. So I think it's really important that we have an allowance for the vinyl siding as it's been stated here.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments? Councilor DeBoer?
Quick question for Karen. Does 4E then return us to the same privileges or rights that people had prior to the zoning change?
So in the neighborhood frontage areas, there were previously no standards in those areas for any kind, any design standards at all.
So I'm
Yes.
correct that this restores them to the rights they had before? Thank you.
Other questions?
I have, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
I guess mine's more of a comment. Obviously, we've talked about this a lot, but I think the main thing that weighs in my mind is the character in the title of character district and what fits in with the vision that so many folks worked hard on for quite some time, and that we've passed and talked about extensively. So obviously there's some compromise here, and I think that was intended with the Planning and Zoning Commission as well. So either way, I feel like we're getting there is the intention of compromise, which is, I think, what this body seeks a lot.
Excellent. Yep. Other comments? Seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded to pass this ordinance for vinyl siding on residential buildings with 6 or fewer dwelling units in the neighborhood frontages. Moved and seconded, requires a roll call vote with 5 aye votes being required.
5 voting aye, 2 voting nay.
Okay, so that does pass. And so don't need to do 5 or 6 then. And this is its first consideration as well. So it'll take 2 more votes or readings like this the next 2 meetings in order to get final approval. So with that, going over to items, old business, item 7, passing ordinance 3030, vacating certain public right-of-way along Hudson Road upon its third and final consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any council questions or discussion? Any from the public on this item? Seeing none, then moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And so that passes, and now it's a law since it's its final consideration. Consent calendar takes us over where the following items will be acted upon by a voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. And we're more than happy to pull items that you wish to discuss. So does any council member request to pull an item from 8 through 15?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Item 14A, please.
Item 14A. Okay, any others? Okay, any from the public? Okay, so is there then a motion to approve all of those items except for item 14A?
So move.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that does pass and takes us to the 14A separately, which is approving the following applications for cigarette, tobacco, nicotine, and vapor permits for A, Great Wall at 2125 College Street, Suite D. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilmember Ganfield.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question may be for Mr. Rogers here, but having just approved the settlement agreement in item 13 that provides for a 30-day suspension of the license that should extend, I'm assuming, through July 13th, does the beginning day of this new renewal of July 1st supersede that, or does the suspension continue until the 13th of July?
I believe that it's a different owner, but I might be having my citations mixed up here. So if there's a violation established, it would be the date of the violation, and so it would precede July 1, the new permit date.
So does that, to understand, does that mean that if it's a new owner, they still are under that?
They're not, but I'm not sure I'm correct on that. We just had one we did a settlement agreement on, but I think that was Banny's.
That was different.
Yeah.
So this agreement, if I may, on item 13 is for the same DBA. My concern there is that it's a renewal with an effective date of July 1st under this document. Should that document be amended to July 13th as a start date
Oh, I see.
to allow for the current suspension that we just approved?
It doesn't need to be, and that suspension will stay in place.
Okay.
Regardless of the permit date.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, thank you. Anything else to discuss on that?
Actually,
Is
Mr.
there-
Mayor?
Yes. Councilor Cruz.
This would be also for Mr. Rogers. And I think I know the answer to this, but are we allowed, let me back up. I get comments from people all over the city about how many types of establishments we allow and tobacco bars. Can we, or how could a person, if at all, city, regulate?
I'll have to step in on that. That's not really what we're discussing tonight.
Or we're
It's not
discussing
because we're
renewing a
discussing an
permit?
individual, please don't interrupt. We're discussing an individual permit for this license. I know where you're going, to say, have the ability to restrict how many we do, but that's not what we're discussing here tonight. We need to
Well,
look
if we're
at
going to renew
individual
something, it'd be nice ancillary information to ask.
we need to discuss this item as it is, just as we would look at a vote on every other item as it is. So please, if you'd like to bring that forward, I'd love to see that referral at the end
Nice
of
to
the
get
night.
an
to
answer right now,
discuss.
real quick.
No, sir. I want to be careful not to get us on rabbit trails. So looking at item 14A, any other discussions on 14A? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that does pass as well. And takes us over to the resolution calendar, where these items will be acted upon on a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Is there any desire to pull the item from 17 through, 46?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to double check. You pulled number 34 earlier?
Yes, 34 will not be debated tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the clarification. Yeah, so no item 34. Any others for discussion from council? Okay, seeing none. Any from the public? Okay, seeing none. Then all in favor of approving the resolution calendar, say,
I think it's
yeah,
a vote.
right, I'm getting ahead of myself. Is there a motion to approve those items from 17 through 46 with the exception of 34, which we're not discussing?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thanks for the clarification, Councilor DeVere. Moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that takes us over to item 47, which is passing an ordinance amending Chapter 2 Administration of the Code of Ordinances relative to salaries for elected officials upon its first consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council questions and discussion. Okay, seeing none. Then questions from the public or comments? Yes, Mr. Frine. Name and city for the record.
TJ Fry, Cedar Falls. It's kind of weird to say it that way. So we're looking at going up to about $12,000 a year for city council. That's, as it sits right now, about a 74% pay increase. I've been told the number of 12,000 comes from averaging the top 15 cities in Iowa. The funny thing about averaging the top 15 cities in Iowa is that Cedar Falls is number 14. So we're far from average population size at this point. 74% raise in 1 year. Looking at across the board raises that I've been following along with out of interest, and we're looking at between 3 and 5% for most people this year. Still below the inflation percentage, but far below what you guys are asking, 74%. There was no budget item for this. I didn't see it budgeted, a pay raise for city council when we were doing budget discussions. Why? And then, why not? It's because we're looking at spending another $42,000 that we haven't budgeted for. Where's that money going to come from? Somebody can't get a discussion worthwhile about a public bathroom downtown Cedar Falls, but we can discuss our own pay raises. Why not stagger it? I've never seen a 74% increase over 1 year. Why not stagger it if it's something that is that important? 8,000 next year, 10,000 the year after, 12,000 the year after that. You can get there, but I've never seen it all come in one jump. Several jobs around the city make significantly less than what a city council member makes when you start talking about per hour. We also have a city administrator, city manager. No other city has a city manager and a mayor. That takes a lot of the responsibility away from the council. A lot of stuff gets brought forward to council. Council's not bringing a lot of stuff forward. That's how it works here in Cedar Falls. I broke down roughly what I think the city council hourly rate is based on this $12,000 number. And again, for city council, there's no requirements. There's no job description. There's no right to respond to anybody. The citizens pay for representative government, right? It's all about what the citizens are willing to pay, not at what you tell them they're going to pay. I've calculated roughly 208 hours a year, kind of broken down here on my map. That comes out to $57.69 an hour. There are very few positions around the city that I'm aware of that pay $57.69 an hour. That's more than the top PSO, $41.53. That's more than I make at my job per hour. That's more than I would venture to guess teachers, support staff in the schools are all making far less than what you're asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on the item? Mr. Wilson, just name and city for the record, please, sir.
Josh Wilson, Cedar Falls. I'm also here to speak against the proposed nearly 74% increase for members of the City Council's salary being voted on, ironically, by the same members who will profit from that very increase. Several years ago, council salary increases were tied to the annual Federal Consumer Price Index in many cities across Iowa, including our neighbors right in Waterloo. Among the reasons for doing this was to provide a fair and unbiased way of providing council salaries. To take something from one of the work sessions earlier, Mr. Mayor, when you were talking about boards and commissions becoming political if council got involved, I find this to be political in a sense too. I'll get to that later. Members of this council have complained that they are not paid enough and that those same council members attempt to draw comparisons to other cities for validation that they are underpaid. It is true that councils are compensated differently based on the cities they represent because each city council has their own unique set of challenges. I can support an increase in salary for this council, but not at the instant insane rate of 74%. Council should gradually raise their pay if you're going to do so. If you want to get to the $12,000, then raise it a little bit each year. The council should lead by example. We just had a budget process where you had city staff and departments cutting their budget, and now you are turning around and increasing it by giving yourselves a raise. The average raise, as Mr. Frine pointed out, is between 3% and 5% in the United States. That's both public and private sector. There's several local examples I could go through. Waterloo this year, a 2 to 3% raise for their employees. The Cedar Falls school teachers and counselors and libraries in the public schools were just given a 3% raise. Cedar Falls utilities had raise rates between 3.5 and 5.5%. These are real numbers, real data points that show the type of cost of living increases that your constituents are getting out there. Yet tonight, you're going to vote for an unheard of 74% raise all at once. This council meets twice a month and for the most part only approves the work that has already been brought forward by the city staff. This is proven by the phrase that repeats in all of our heads over and over again for those of us who attend these meetings, all voting aye, Mr. Mayor. Council has been missing also from some very key important business decisions in the last few weeks, months, and years. For example, only 2 of the 7 members even played a role in the fire chief finalist interviews, and then 6 voted for the new fire chief without even having met or listened to both of the finalists. You are welcome to attend. The staff would have loved it. The other big argument, and here's where we come to the politics, is that you can't get people to run for office. Yet to date, there are already candidates announced in every single election that will be held in November. Clearly, the candidates aren't worried about the pay. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is that certain council members don't like the quality of candidates running. In one text exchange that I had with a council member, it was stated verbatim, quote, "We are trying to set the level in advance of an election season. It is nearly impossible to convince those too busy to do the job that we need to overrule staff or loud lobbyists like developers if we can't get a team together." Sure sounds political to me. I was told who could argue that flipping burgers or cashiering the gas station should pay more than the city council leading a city of 41,000. I'll argue that. The city council doesn't lead the city. Certainly not this council. You don't even lead your own meetings. The mayor...
Mr. Wilson, please keep your comments civil.
Sure. Well, just for a point of clarification, a council member tried to say something earlier and you shot him down and there was no... That's what I was referencing.
Please
so everyone
keep your
can
comments
see
civil.
that. The mayor's making six figures. The point that burger flippers make more than council is just insulting. I think they do quite a bit more. That's my opinion. Finally, I was told, quote, "I'm not getting a 70% raise. I'm setting the level to make almost enough to make it a tolerable burden." Public service isn't a burden. It's a privilege. At any time, if any of you feel you're underpaid or burdened, you're welcome to step aside. As just a little note, I think it would be fun to watch. I think you should all ride in the Sturgis Falls Parade this weekend and put right on your cars, "I just raised my salary 74%. There's no better way to show your constituents that you are gravely out of touch with the world we live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I have a couple of notes for just the part, there's a question earlier, a note about the mayors, or city, we're the only city that has a mayor and an administrator, but by state law, all cities are required to have a city mayor. The difference in Cedar Falls is that we're one of only 3 cities that has a full-time mayor. Nearly all other cities except for Waterloo and Council Bluffs have a part-time mayor. And what I'm finding, kind of a separate topic, but I'm finding is they're basically working full-time for part-time pay. I'll turn it over to council. Mr. Mayor.
I think you have.
Oh, you have one more public comment. Okay, Ms. Stahl, please, go right ahead.
I support city council getting paid more, but I don't hear from city council people. I hear from city council people that they have no control and they're being bullied, or even their emails being blocked by administration in Cedar Falls. And I have trouble having people get a raise when they are left ineffective, have been told by administration that they intend to leave them ineffective if they don't follow what administration wants. And then I don't see them standing up to them and putting an end to it and showing who's in charge.
Thank you, Ms. Stahl. I'm not even going to respond to that and dignify it. Yes. Mr. Griffiths.
Roadhouse, Cedar Falls. I would just like to share for the record that I think the raise that's being set before is too much. It's interesting, we had a committee meeting, we were cutting 6 $12,000 items that were going to benefit, I think, a lot of folks in the community, and it was good to hear discussion on both sides. So not to say that one item was more important than another, but we heard from folks there. And I believe it was 2 weeks later, maybe it was 2 meetings later, where we're giving $40,000 pretty quickly. And so I would like to be on record to say that I think that's too much for the job that's being done. I would be in favor of there's systematic raises to get to a level that's seen as fair. I think this number was kind of pulled out of the sky and then put there. And from folks I've talked to, that just seems like a high number really quickly. And I would echo the sentiment that it's a privilege to serve our communities. And that seems like we're given quite a lot pretty quick. And I think there's many in the community that feel that that's too much for what's being done. So I just want to go on record to say that. Thank you for your service. I appreciate what all of you do. I know it can be very thankless, very thankful for the time that you have put in. And I just want to go on record to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Grouse. Other public comments? Mr. Loddick, name and city.
Danny Loddick, Cedar Falls. Don't need to repeat some of the things that were said, but I did want to, just perception is reality. And in the year where we did set a 0% budget increase and essentially told our staffs, do more, do as much as you can with less, I hesitate to then at the same time increase council salaries, just from the perception that it sets with staff, with our team members, with everyone trying to run the city. I think we do have an incredible staff, and fortunate that we've got the full-time mayor, full-time administrator that can really help bring a lot of that work to council members. So just from a perception standpoint, I really worry when we're essentially saying 0% tax increase and keeping our budget the same, but then also increasing our salaries. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Other comments from public? Okay, seeing none, then back to council. Councilor Cruz, I think you had started us off.
I guess I'd like to reply to some of those points. There's 947 cities in Iowa, and we're looking at the cities to calculate the average pay. When I did the calculations, I want to say it was 16 cities. One didn't respond. I reached out to the city clerk there, got the numbers, did the average, and it was the population, I want to say over 21,000. I think the lowest in there was 35 on up. And there was a number of cities considerably higher than the 12,000 that we were asking for. The average of the 15, not counting Cedar Falls, was 12,700 and some. Taking out the highest and the lowest, similar to what the city had done in calculations, it was 12,050 or something like that. So we're asking for a base pay reset of 1,000 a month. A comment to the hours put in per week, per month. I put in significant hours above what was this example stated there, and some of the people that deal with me know that. As a council, we're dealing with a budget that in the next 5 years has to decide what to do with $500 million. And I think getting 1,000 a month to reset our base pay to be comparable to what other communities of our size has is very reasonable. It's not a 74% increase comparing it to the cost of living. It's looking at the base pay for our size city compared to others of our size. Many research items that staff does, they go out and compare us to other communities our size. I think it's reasonable to do so in this case here. And as far as earning my keep, during the budget discussions, I was the single counselor that brought forward any discussion on the income side of the city budget. Many people were slashing the expense side, but I pulled in, I want to say $400,000 of extra hotel motel tax, did my research on that, and I pulled it in, and I believe the ultimate savings for the citizens is about $353,000 to the city citizens. So I feel I earn my pay. I'm a business analyst, so that might be different than some other occupations. But I could go on more, but it's amounting to setting a new base pay and then going forward. So, thank you.
Councilor Harding.
All right. I think maybe for once I'll have a fairly interesting aspect because I won't get 1 cent of this. And I'm okay with that because I support it still. It's a very tough job to be up here. It's a lot of hours, and the 208 hours, it's a lot more than that. There's really no amount of hours. You can't say that we have to be here. We don't have to show up to any meetings. Technically, we could just get elected and not do anything for 4 years. So you're right, there is no expectation, but at the same time, there's an insanely high expectation that you put in the time, and I would venture, I tried to add it up, and I got lost because of interviews, meetings, that. It's at least 1,000 hours a year. So for me, easy, especially with all of the mayor pro tem duties that I've taken on. So again, I'm not going to get a cent of this, and I'm okay with that. I want the person that comes in after me to get the money. That's what I want because they deserve it. If they're going to do the job right, they deserve the money. It's not, 74%. It sounds like a lot, and it does, and perception is reality. So maybe it seems like a lot, but when you say $1,000 a month to serve your city and put in that kind of time, I think it's well deserved. For, like I said, I have no qualms with how much I made. I want the next person to get it. As far as doing it gradually, well, we're hamstringed on that because you have to do it after the next election cycle by the law. And this is where I wanted to talk to make sure I have my point across. But if you research the state law, you can't do 1,000 a year. You have to do it after a specific date and cycle. So it's either all or nothing. So you can't do that. It's illegal. So you have to make a number, you have to pick it, and you have to stick with it. And I think it is a privilege to serve, and I have been very privileged to serve for these 4 years. But I also, having done that and being in the positions and the amount of time I put in, realize that the person that serves after me deserves more. So I think this should pass, and I think whoever takes my seat, good luck, and I hope you get 1,000 a month.
Other comments from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Dunn.
I don't have anything that Councilman Harding pretty much echoes what I say, but you're right. You're absolutely right when you say that there's no law, rule, or anything of what you have to give. But I from the moment that I have been elected, which I was not your typical election, I was elected and then like 2 days later sworn in, and I was sitting in a meeting, I think, within the week. I have put no less than 15 hours a week of my time, if not more. That's the average. And I will say this, it is very much a privilege to serve. I've been elected 2 times by this city as an at-large council member. I give my all to this position. My family gives their all to this position. For me, it is about not stifling anyone who wants to serve their community. And that's what I feel like when you have folks, this council doesn't even look like what it did even 10 years ago. You have a much younger council sitting here, people who are raising families, working 1 or 2 or more jobs. When this is about, for me, making sure that a person can afford to serve on their city council. If you have to take away, you know, say you work as, I don't know, anywhere where you don't have PTO or any paid time off or any benefits like that, but you still have the drive to serve your community, to make your world better, at least your little town of Cedar Falls, then you should have the income coming in to replace the income that you've lost. And you don't have that all the time. I think I'm a pretty good person. Mr. Mayor, can I have a conversation? When you put out a call
You're a pretty good person.
for help, no, when you put out a call for, hey, I need somebody for a condemnation hearing or something.
Absolutely. She is
I
the first
try
to
to
jump in.
make sure that I am you are getting your money from out of me. So what my point is you're absolutely right. It is what you make of it. Some people may do a lot. Some people may do the bare minimum. You really have no way to know because you're not sitting in on them. And also, you really have no way to know. You can have all the things in the world. You may have served to run campaigns and all those things until you are sitting in this seat with your face and your name tied to this position. And I say this with the most respect because I would have said it to myself 4 years ago or not. You have no clue. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's just the fact. You don't know. And even in Cedar Falls, Iowa, it takes a lot. So I understand that it seems like when is a good time? I don't know when a good time is. It doesn't seem like the world's going in a real upswing right now. But I want to make sure that people can serve and run and not have to worry about, and I said it before, if you think anybody's running, like I could figure out a whole bunch of other gigs to do that, no offense to anyone, would be a lot more fun and probably I'd make, you're not making money quickly here. My point is nobody's doing this for the cash, but I don't want to hinder anybody from ever being able to do it.
Thank you.
And I also, Mr. Mayor, I think we teeter sometimes on disrespectfulness to our staff, and that really bothers me when people are making accusations that somehow our staff is shutting down and blocking emails. That's something I'm not
going to address.
True.
Yeah. But before that, any other comments, questions from council?
I would say that, if I can speak, Mr.
Please,
Mayor.
please.
So The same thing goes with, I know Mr. Sires is very generous with his, and he's mentioned, so I don't mean to call you out, Dave, but,
No, that's fine, whatever you say.
I'm the same way. My wife and I are generous. We try to donate to causes that, this certainly, the money that will come from this isn't going to touch what those causes are, right? But it's the position, to Mrs. Dunn's point, the money for this position, me, Dave, whoever else that says that, it's the privilege to serve. It is a privilege to serve. The 74%, there's a bit of a level set to get us there. It's not, $1,000 a month. And Kelly's right about the hours that goes into this and the time we spend. That saying that, oh, we're 6-1 vote again, Mr. Mayor, is because we don't come here going, we don't know anything, and we haven't met with anybody. We meet with Ron, we meet with Mr. Rogers, we're spending time beyond the hours that we're in here. And so that there aren't any surprises. If any of us looked in this packet tonight and went, oh, wow, that's on there, I haven't a clue what that is, that's not accurate. So that I, again, will echo what Mrs. Dunn said. We are running this city. We have a great staff. That staff, I'll put this staff against any city in this nation with Bertie and Chase and Jennifer, everybody. We work together. Yeah, we're the elected officials. If they're not going down the right path, we're going to give them redirection. And that's where that vote comes in. And if someone's bullying me or making me vote a certain way, I guess I haven't seen that happen because it ain't going to happen. So that's where I am.
Thanks. So I'll comment on here too. This $12,000 figure, regardless how anybody else came up with it, it's something I was thinking of years ago when I was on city council. I brought up the idea at goal setting to say I'd love for council to consider adjusting its pay because of the workload that's required. 20 years ago, or 24 years ago now, when this was first set, it was a very different council. It was a very different expectation on the council. I strongly disagree with some of you, but I know you do the work. Like these aren't days of the paper packets where people would open their packets at the meeting and pull out, and like that's the first time they've seen it. This is the council that does research and does homework behind the scenes and also attends important ceremonies in the life of the city, activities that's very important for the staff to see council at, ride-alongs, other activities. I'm very proud of the council for how much work they put in every day and for the excellent dialogue we have. That's something that only happens because everybody's done the homework ahead of time, and we don't have to agree. I'm glad that we don't agree all the time. Like that's where we're trying to pull the best decisions out. And so we don't see a whole lot of 7-0s on the controversial topics. It's usually split, and that's how it should be. Try to get more people on board, but that's hard. And to do that, it requires time. And when I was on council, looking at my time, I was typically about 10 hours a week on a good day or a good week. So 10 hours a week, 50 weeks, I would just figure two weeks off a year, Christmas time. So that'd put me at what, 50 or 500 hours? And then that you take that $12,000 divided by 500 hours, and you get $24 an hour. Now, if somebody wants to do less than that on council, they can get away with that, 5 hours a week. They probably could be all right. It's the meetings, and then it's maybe some discussion with staff. But I would say the vast majority, if not all, the council members are putting in 10 hours a week. And that's something that you can easily hold elected officials accountable for at election time. Are they responding to emails? Are they engaging with you? Are they attending neighborhood association meetings, things like that? It depends on what your expectations are. But I certainly believe that compensation certainly shouldn't get rich in government service, but having just compensation I think makes sense. This is not a raise in my mind. It's that base reset, as Councilmember Cruz said. It's setting at the level it should be, particularly noting that these past 3 years, we've moved so much more responsibility onto council, especially the committee hearings and the work that Kelly Dunn had done for leading the budget discussions. Gosh, that was monumental, and took a lot of homework, a lot of extra meetings with Ron and with Director Rodenbeck to make sure that she was ready for that. Other council members have those same kind of responsibilities. So I have no qualms about that $12,000 a year request. Thank you.
Real quick, just a day in the life of, I won't take up much time. This is my last couple weeks. We did a EMT meeting in the morning Monday, and I had to take off work for this. I did an AMVETS thing where I walked in Memorial Day, and I know Memorial Day's off for a lot of people, but I was not off on Memorial Day. I did have to work. I did a fire chief interview. I did 3 committee interviews. I did a meeting with Ron for another AMVETS Flag Day. I came and I started and I ran Flag Day. I did a Zoom interview on Friday for a committee. I did 2 Zoom interviews today for a committee. And I've been at this meeting for coming up on almost 5 hours. That's the last 3 weeks, people. That's how much, and that doesn't count the emails I've done. And that doesn't count the amount of time I've put in researching this stuff. So when people get up there, and I don't get heated or emotional about many things, but when people get up there and say that it's too much money, it's not. I will give you my hours. These people work hard. And I agree with the mayor, while I don't necessarily see eye to eye on every issue with every single person up here, I know they've put in the time and the homework. I can tell. You know, we don't have these conversations with people who aren't putting in homework. So that's a day in the last 3 weeks of a council person that, just so everybody knows, it's a lot more than you think. That's a lot. And I'd be willing to sit down with anybody and show them my schedule, all the blue dots, because council's blue on my calendar. Gigs are red. Family's like black? Orange. No, it's not. It's not black. It's orange. Okay. All right. That's it. I'm done.
Thanks, Simon. Any other comments? We've got a pretty good gambit here. All right. So let me get back to my sheet here. Moved a lot of notes around. I might need your help here. There we go.
Number 47.
There it is, 47. Okay, so ordinance, it's passing an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Administration of the Code of Ordinances relative to salaries for elected officials. Upon its first consideration, it requires a roll call vote.
Yeah, I know. I think it's broke.
We broke it.
Mm-hmm. I have to do a voice vote.
Stand easy for a moment for technical issues.
Lots of them. I should have any more buttons. Mm-hmm. 3 of them. Go back in.
Just let me know when you do a verbal roll call. It's fine. We've only got 4 items left. Just gonna try a quick reset, and if not, we'll go to a voice held vote.
Not available.
It clocked out.
Yeah. I don't think. I don't think we're going.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call in.
Schultz.
Aye.
Cruz. What about me?
Susan first, next.
Sure. Susan.
No.
Cruz.
Aye.
Harding.
Aye.
Ganfield.
Aye.
Sayers.
Nay.
Dunn.
Aye.
5 voting aye, 2 voting nay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And then that takes us over to, so this first consideration requires 2 more votes in order to be accepted into the ordinances. So 2 more meetings for this. Item 48 is passing an ordinance amending Chapter 19, Streets and Sidewalks of the Code of Ordinances relative to removal of ice and snow upon its first consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council questions. Okay, seeing none. Any from the public wish to question or comment on the item? Okay, seeing none. Then back to council. Just to note, the big changes on this were changing from after snowfall, it's going to say 48 hours specifically is when it has to, snowfall has to be removed after the snow event ends. And then there's the second part was what? I have my notes on me.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I do like to make some comments, I'm sorry.
Okay, please, go right ahead.
Reading through this and experiencing snow removal issues with intersections where snow plows deposit snow, I'm having difficulty thinking of changing the natural accumulation of snow to basically say any accumulation of snow. There's streets in town that the snow plows are taking 2 lanes of traffic of snow and depositing it on top of the sidewalk. And we're saying that in 48 hours and removing the term reasonable amount of time and forcing citizens who may not have the physical ability or the equipment to remove the ice-packed snow that's coming off the streets onto the sidewalks. I think this should be rewritten in a different way. And if I may, I'd like to change or remove that 48-hour and return it back to a reasonable amount of time, if anything. I really don't even like the language here because it's very heavy-handed and we need a better solution for this.
So I'll need a strike through and a replacement from you.
Well, 2 things.
And plus we need to move it, so as an amendment. So you want to make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion to remove the 48 hours at the end of the weather event and return it to a reasonable amount of time.
Reasonable time. Okay, which basically that part would be just keeping it as the same ordinance. Is that correct?
That would be my understanding. He just wants to go with what we currently have versus a 48-hour window.
Well, there's also the natural accumulation versus the city plows depositing heavy snow into the sidewalks of people. It's one thing to have the intersection where there's no place for the snow to go, and there's accommodations in here for hardship or a detour, I guess you want to say. Alternate route is how they describe it here, no longer than 15 feet to sidestep 4 or 5 feet of snow that ends up on your intersected sidewalks. You know, you got some accommodation for that, but the thing that's not accommodated for here is when you have 1,000 feet of sidewalk, and I think a Waterloo Road in particular, and there's other places in the city where your sidewalk is really...
We're really pushing into where we'd need a second. So is there a second to continue the discussion? Okay, I don't see a push for this, so.
Well, can I ask a question before I'll second it unless I can ask a question, but wasn't the reason for the change because of problems in court, that you had to have a time?
Lack of clarity has been the problem of when does it have to be removed, how much needs to be removed, those types of things. So the lack of clarity was causing problems and arguments with folks and success on getting it addressed.
Okay. Councilor DeBoer, I called it a second, so now you can discuss as much as you want.
So we have to have some specific time period listed there instead of just saying a reasonable time or whatever. Yeah, I used to say reasonable. Otherwise, we don't have success in court for the people who just never will plow or clear.
So we studied a couple of different jurisdictions and how they handled the snow removal. We've had a lot of disagreements in the interpretation of when snow has to be removed. One person's reasonable amount of time is very different than another's. And so in looking at other jurisdictions, they did have a time frame. We also, I apologize, I don't remember the name of the study, but there was a area study for Black Hawk County that did actually call out Cedar Falls for not identifying that time frame for accessibility and being able to be ensure that streets are cleared in a reasonable amount of time that's defined so that someone knows when the streets will be cleared and when they'll be available to them. So it's not just about court, but it's also making sure that there's expectations that are understood.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Cruz.
Ms. Castle, you said streets. We're talking about sidewalks.
I'm sorry. I should have said sidewalks. I said streets, but I was meaning the sidewalks and the clearing.
So we're promoting a dry sidewalk policy, but we don't have a dry street policy. The streets are allowed to be plowed after there's 2-3 inches, and some, depending on the event and type of snow that's coming and all that, and the future predictions of temperature. But here we want citizens to have a dry sidewalk, the full width. And again, I point out there's parts of streets and areas of streets that the sidewalk is right next where 2 lanes of traffic of snow get plowed onto it. And it's not reasonable. You know, you got the natural accumulation of snow versus the plowed snow that's deposited that's as heavy as a brick, heavy as concrete. I go on and you say 48 hours of the end of the weather event. So when does a snowstorm officially end? When you see blue sky? When you don't have flurries anymore? When the wind stops blowing it across your street after you shoveled it away? Or is it after the snowplow went through the 3rd time to get it out to the edges to plug up your front driveway again for the 3rd time? And, you know, this is, I don't know if there's going to be a good solution that you can put in print, but I can't support really any of this the way it is here. And I understand you've got the issues with court, but an attorney could come in here and say, when's the end of the weather event? Do we publish that somehow to say, when's the end? You know, we're putting a burden on citizens, and this is not the right way to do it here. This is too heavy-handed for me. And even amending it, it still doesn't suit me because I want to go back to the natural accumulations.
Councilor Harding.
I like the clarity, 48 hours. You know, no one's putting a stopwatch on. People are going to, you know, it's over when the snow stops falling. Unfortunately, if we have another event, then it starts again, the time. So it's not like you have to clear it. So obviously, it's within reason. Also, I like that we've provided an alternate route for people so that they don't have to shovel all of at the intersection of the sidewalk. They can go around. So I think we've done that. I actually have shoveled Waterloo Road sidewalks. I live right there. And so I walk around and I shovel it. Occasionally, I've done it to help people out. I have lived there 5 years now, and I've shoveled every winter, and I've never seen the snowplow. It pushes up snow, but it's never gone over onto the sidewalk, and I've shoveled that sidewalk many times. So it is a long road, and I can only speak for Hawthorne down to Madison, which I don't shovel the whole thing. I just go out and help one of my neighbors who was older, and I don't do it enough. I should do it. It's my good exercise. It's the only time I exercise, actually. So anyway, I feel like we have accommodated some people here with this, and there's no perfect solution. You are correct. I agree with you there. But the 48 hours puts an expectation on it that's specific, and we have tried to provide a workaround with people as far as getting around those sidewalk intersections. So I think, if we've been having trouble with it, let's change it and see how it goes. And if for some reason we need to change it again, we'll change it again. Because no matter what, there's going to be trouble with it. I can guarantee you that. If we don't change it, there'll be trouble. If we change it, there'll be trouble. One thing that's constant is there's trouble. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other notes for the amendment?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Dunn.
For me, it's mainly about safety, especially of kids, and I mean, really all of us, but it really bothers me when the kids, when there is a sidewalk and somebody, the homeowner, whoever's responsible, does not clear their sidewalk. As far as, I also live not far from Councilman Harding, and we do utilize Waterloo Road quite a bit. And same thing, I wish I could be sympathetic, oh, yeah, you know what, it was just the snowplow and they're going to get to it and clean it up. Guess what? They don't. So, and a lot of them are businesses. I mean, I can be more empathetic to a citizen who lives and maybe, you know, has different things going on in their life. But if you're running a business, you better budget to get out there and clean the sidewalk. So I guess that's the thing and it's about accommodating. And we just had a disability pride proclamation. I think a lot of times we don't think about, like, if you're able-bodied and able to walk around on your 2 feet, you probably don't think about the person that relies on some form of alternate means of getting around. And ever since I've served on here and the Human Rights Commission has brought that to my attention several times, I think about those folks and how do they get around when they can't get through intersections in the snow? So anyway, I think in the end, let's try it. And if we have to go back and change it, we will. But I love the clarification.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Bitterberg.
Are we only discussing the 48-hour or the other items on it?
48 hours and the other item that he was.
Natural.
Yeah, natural.
The natural?
That's the only thing in the amendment.
Because, okay, so I can't talk about the alternate route. I just
Right,
wanted.
that's not part of the amendment. We can in a minute.
No, I know. I was just going to try to get a plug to Stephanie as to how people do that, because I think it's an important addition that's been made to it. But I'll wait till after the amendment to ask.
Okay. Yep, just to keep things clear. Yes, Councilor Gayfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chase, if you wouldn't mind, if a resident called and said, hey, the snowplow's pushed a ton of ice onto my sidewalk and I don't have the utilities to clean it, would we be willing to help those individuals out in a case-by-case basis?
Generally, we have not, unless it's a large quantity that we know we have deposited there. A lot of times the sidewalk is offset enough to have enough snow storage. There are areas of town where the sidewalk is directly adjacent to the street where it is a challenge, and we do try to avoid piling it on those areas.
I've personally witnessed the plow drivers go out and around and change the wings so that they don't deposit into a freshly cleared driveway. I know you guys are doing your part, so I appreciate that on all your plow drivers. Thank them for that. I would assume the same would be true here. I do have a concern with removing the natural accumulations, which would include any of the snow and ice that we would deposit, and then putting a 48-hour limit. Would you entertain a 72-hour limit and remove the natural accumulation? So they still have to clear it, make it safe, make the full width of it safe for all of our citizens, including those that aren't ambulatory, to have this 72 hours to clear that off so that it's enforceable. Would you be willing to accept that amendment to 72 hours and leave the accumulations as is?
Mr. Mayor.
So is that a question?
A friendly amendment request, I suppose.
I didn't catch that as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
He's requesting 72 hours.
I'd request
I do.
72 hours instead of 48.
Would you be willing to entertain that as changing it to strike 48, or rather than
Change
reasonable
48 to
time, change it to
72?
72?
Well, yeah, I'll consider that for sure. But my intention was not to discuss natural accumulations. I was just looking at the time frame, a reasonable amount of time, and then we're adding 48 hours from the end of the weather event. The snow stops, the flurries stop, the snowflakes stop, but the wind doesn't stop. And it's wind chill of below zero and so on and so forth. So this puts too much of a heavy hand on enforcement. And the end of the weather event is just as vague as a reasonable amount of time. You can kind of narrow it down to the end of a weather event, but that's vague in my mind. But just want to clarify that my motion for amending is just on the 48 hours, and I will go to 72 as a friendly change.
Okay. So
Mr.
changing
Mayor?
that, yes, just a moment. Changing that amendment to 72 hours. Okay, and that's the only thing in this amendment then is changing the 48 hours that's currently listed to 72 hours. So that's what now is being discussed, if council agrees with that. Okay, so yes, Councilor Schultz.
I don't agree with, I think 48 hours is reasonable. 72 hours, as Ms. Dunn has talked about, there's people that rely on those sidewalks for transportation. Streets, having a dry policy for streets, you get a clear make it passable for cars. We're not walking on those like we are walking on sidewalks. That's the differentiation there. But 48 hours, I don't know. I'm not a meteorologist, but I can tell when the snow stops, and I can start my clock and get that figured out. And I'd say about 80% of everyone that has to remove their snow is on that same direction. It's the folks that we have trouble with them clearing their walks that the time limit is for. So I'm not in favor of 72 hours. I'm in favor of the 48.
Okay. So,
Mr. Mayor, can I just explain like the practicality of 72 hours versus 48?
please do, sir.
So for instance, if today it would have snowed, today is Tuesday, we wouldn't start enforcement till Friday morning. So if it's 72 hours, we wouldn't start enforcement till Monday then, almost a week later. So that's kind of the difference when the weekend starts to fall in there as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, of the difference between the requirement and the enforcement of that requirement. It doesn't happen right at the 48-hour point anyway.
Okay.
So,
Well,
it's a tool, as Councilmember Schultz said, it's a tool to gain compliance when we know that we have people on the sidewalk who need to use that sidewalk. Yes,
Real
Councilor
quick. It's just a clarification. Again, reasonable time. We would all probably figure out a reasonable time. But in law, to be as specific as possible definitely helps out. 48 hours. It's just a clarity. Again, we're going to have trouble with this regardless, whether we change it or don't change it. And we can sit up here and try to debate what's best. We're never going to figure that out. It's impossible. Okay?
Yeah, and if someone's been cited, they're going to be cited days after. The 48 is just that security, like, yes, it's been actually 84 hours and they've not done it. So it's definitely more than 48. I don't think staff will want to be out with stopwatches trying to see when they're exactly at 48 hours, because it just, again, trying to prove that is very difficult.
It's a clarification.
Yeah. All right. So,
Mr. Mayor,
I think we've beaten this one.
I'd like to withdraw that request.
All right. So still back at 48 hours?
I do want to further ask Mr. Rogers a question.
On the original motion, certainly.
Yeah. I've recall over the years now, you've mentioned things that it's sort of like the buyer beware. We live in Iowa. We know there's snow. There's no melted snow becomes ice at night. There's an assumed liability by living in Iowa. What's the legal term that we have in the legal profession?
You have a duty to maintain a proper lookout.
Duty to maintain
a proper lookout for persons traveling along a sidewalk.
Okay, but it's March, snow is melting, water comes across and freezes overnight. There's a duty for the common citizens to understand that there's going to be water creeping in some of the cracks and spots.
Precisely.
So we're not do we have to be out there with ice melt every night? Or where's the cutoff on reasonable, help me out here, what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I don't think I can't imagine a set of circumstances where the city's going to issue a citation for overnight a melt and freezing situation if the owner has cleared the sidewalk.
So is a half inch of packed snow under some footprints considered okay? I mean, I'm getting kind of ridiculous maybe, but in the legal world.
When we're talking about maintaining a clear sidewalk, it is, the rule of reason comes into there somewhere. So for instance, I don't think anyone would have an expectation in the middle of winter in Iowa that every tiny little patch of packed snow would be removed. But if the owner's making a reasonable effort to clear that sidewalk so it's passable for folks, including folks that may travel in different ways than walking, I just don't see that. I mean, Jamie can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see issuing citations under that.
That's what I'm trying to get at. I understand you've got citizens that just won't do it.
Right.
Okay. And then the footpath becomes on the top of the drifts, and that becomes the trail. And that happens quite quickly by the campus because traffic's out there at early morning to go to class. So the rule of reason, I guess, is the legal concept I was.
Yeah, and keep in mind as well that it's 48-hour window to remove, but then if enforcement takes place, there's another 24-hour notice that if it's not acceptable, then, or they haven't done it at all, then at least they'll have a notice.
Right.
You haven't complied, so you need to do so.
Then, going back to the wind blowing, wind chill, hard winds, snow is stopped, but the weather event doesn't stop until it's calm out and it's not below zero wind chill, would you say?
So the end of the weather event is, I think, is intended to cover snow and mixed snow and rain and things. It's not, the storm's over and it's springtime now. It's, if precipitation has ended, that's the end of the weather event, because that's, the ordinances are directed at the accumulation, not at the wind or anything like that, right? So,
Well, windstorms, there's countless times when it snows and then the wind blows for another day and it drifts in. It's really ridiculous to try to even clear it. I mean, if you got snow blowers, yeah, you can run up and down, but you'll do it several times. So I'm just concerned that we don't start issuing tickets to people that make an effort and then it blows in and drifts in. This is targeted at the people, I'm assuming, that don't want to do anything.
yeah, to your point, if there's strong winds blowing these sidewalks in again, if I were representing the person that got the citation, I'd argue that weather event wasn't over yet.
Right, that's what I'm trying to get at.
But I'd say it'd have to be continuous, wouldn't you? We've got snow followed by whatever, and it's blowing, and it continues to blow, all one weather event. But a week later, if the wind picks up in this, I don't think that's,
No,
I don't think that works.
Yeah, different. Yeah. I just want the public to see what's happening here.
They're great questions, absolutely.
And you're the legal authority here.
Counselor Harding.
I would just say I think we're continuously overthinking this, and I'm ready to vote on it.
I'll second that.
Well, not really up for a second, but.
Not really.
You didn't call the
I'm going to
question.
second it anyway.
All right. We know your feelings now. Is there anything else that we need information-wise? in order to
I
make a
still
vote
would
on?
like my request. I think that the
please.
fact that we're adding an alternate route is really a nice thing, and I'd like to get some, I guess, clarity or explain how a person goes about applying to be able to put in the alternate route.
Sure.
And what does that even mean?
So I'll just go through what we've provided in the ordinance here is that, if there's a case of, at the corner or a little bit beyond the corner, that there's a lot of piling of snow. And so obviously that's very difficult to deal with, as the council has discussed here this evening. And so what we had presented, what Jamie talked about at the committee meeting and what we've put in the ordinance talks about how an owner might request some accommodation for that. So what we would want from the owner is that they give us a clear plan. What are they proposing? We can understand their sketch. We understand the route that's proposed. And they clearly demonstrate that there's a hardship, that we know that the snow's always piled there, for example. And so we may need to go out into the field the first time that it happens and understand that, or we might already know from history of going around town in the past. And so then the next step is to assure that alternate route is safe, relatively level too, so that it is something that people could actually use and isn't just kind of a nod to, well, I tried to do it and that should be good enough. We want it to be similar to what the sidewalk would provide. And so then that area would be cleared, a 4-foot path would be cleared, and we limit that length of the alternate path to 15 feet, just to say that we wouldn't want this path to be extremely lengthy across the entire property. It's meant to be an exception for a certain area.
Okay, thank you. And when that plan is approved, is that basically good forever?
We would keep it at least for the season. I don't know that we've talked about forever, but at least for the season. And then we'd be happy to visit with the property owner if they want to continue doing that based on how did it work out. Maybe we need to make some adjustments. Maybe it didn't work. Maybe they want to change it. But we do, with our permitting system, we would keep a copy of that so that we have that ready. So if we did receive a complaint or a concern, we'd be able to reference the plan that we approved and work with the property owner if it needed to be adjusted.
And will that be available to do on the city's website, or will the person have to come down to City Hall to turn in a plan? I'm hoping you can do it on the website just like we do for potholes.
this time, we don't have anything set up. We have worked with a couple of property owners who have had an issue and have worked through email and conversation. And we would continue that way with the opportunity of maybe looking at our CF1 stop, being able to potentially add something in that area. But until this is approved, we have not been able to set that up.
When you say CF1 stop, you're talking about the website?
CF1 stop is our permitting. It connects directly to our permitting code enforcement website. And all that information is actually put straight into our database if someone enters through that. So then the information would be available for the address right away for our code enforcement officer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember DeBoer. Any other questions or comments from this item? Okay, so it's been motioned and approved to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 19, Streets and Sidewalks of the Code of Ordinances relative to removal of ice and snow upon its first consideration. Requires a roll call vote, so we'll have to do a voice vote.
Yep.
Schultz. You want to take the reverse this time?
Oh, sure. Dunn. Aye. Sires.
Aye.
Ganfield.
Aye, aye, aye.
Harding.
Aye.
Cruz.
Aye.
DeBoer.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
All voting aye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That only counts once, Councilmember Ganfield.
Figured as much.
Item 49 is passing an ordinance amending Chapter 23, Traffic and Motor Vehicles of the Code of Ordinances relative to prohibiting parking on certain portions of Bluebell Road upon its first consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from council? Seeing none. Any from the public? Seeing none. So moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Schultz.
Aye.
DeBoer.
Aye.
Cruz.
Aye.
Harding.
Aye.
Ganfield.
Aye.
Sires.
Aye.
Dunn. Aye. All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that makes me remember for item 48, I did not ask for public comment on that item, but we will be discussing it again at the next two meetings. So if you do want to chime in, certainly that's the time. I apologize for missing that. Item 50, moving over to bills and claims. It's allowing bills and claims for June 20th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? It's moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Dunn. Aye. Sires.
Aye.
Ganfield.
Aye.
Harding.
Aye.
Cruz.
Aye.
DeBoer.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now over to council updates and announcements. Do we have any tonight?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
I'm not sure the date that this took place, but we discussed the email policy that the city had. And what was informally decided was that we were going to use the city-sponsored or city-generated emails. And we didn't have a formal council meeting to put that policy into an ordinance or as far as I'm aware. And I've been getting concerns from citizens that they can't access me using the city-provided website because I don't use it, I don't have it. I use Cruise on Council at AOL. I think there's enough concern out there that we should be allowed as individual council members to continue to use our personal emails on our website for citizens to access us.
For a question for Mr. Gaines, I don't recall when the council discussion took place, that the council actually voted on that or made a determination. Do you
I'm
recall
going
that?
off memory, Mayor, but what I recall is maybe what Mr. Cruz is recalling is I think it was at a committee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been at a committee meeting.
And we did vote on it. And it was 4-3. I think it was 4-3. Might have been 5-2. But I think it was 4-3.
No, it wasn't.
And Director Sorensen, could you speak to just why we have that policy again, or why it's in place to use one or the other for cybersecurity?
It was a security issue, basically. What we did when we went to the new O365, we used to allow emails be directed through our server and forwarded on to their personal accounts. And it's considered a security risk, and we configured our new system so it would not do that and not allow the personal, to forward on to the personal.
Okay, so but just a moment. So I would say with that requirement, there was the option of going one way or the other, but a decision had to be made to choose one or the other. And what was voted on was the continuance. Now, if there's questions about being able to access email, that something's not getting to you, that certainly needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. But
I understand, but
I don't want to relitigate what's already been decided by this council very recently.
But I think there's enough concern among the council members to visit this, because my understanding of technology and talking to other technology people, it can be designed that our individual emails will go through, no problem. It's when you do the distribution list, when you're packaging them together, I think it becomes problematic.
We do not allow forwarding onto any outside entity out of our network from our email system.
We did, and it was working. Individual.
That's policy, though.
Individual, yeah.
It may have worked, but it's policy to not do that for cybersecurity reasons. I mean, it's a big part of our insurance ability to get cyber liability insurance.
Also, just a quick update. It didn't work well for me. A lot of my emails got bounced back, and I never got them when they forwarded it to me. So I had trouble with that all the time.
Okay,
so
then as a alternative, we can have the website show the public our personal emails as a choice to email directly to us. And then if they want to email collectively, there would be the distribution list.
So you're trying to give staff direction here, and I wouldn't allow that without a council.
I'm asking a question.
You're giving staff direction.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask the staff if we could put individual email addresses so the public can communicate directly with us, because if they feel that the correspondence is going through the city server and city purview, then there creates potential bias. I'm just reiterating what people have told me. Okay, I'm doing my council duty here.
Okay, well, here's the problem with that. You're basically asking staff if they can put an address on the website. Certainly, I'll tell you right now, like physically, it can be done. What you're getting at is directing council to make that change, or trying to see if council is willing to direct that change. That I would take as a referral, but I feel like you're masquerading a direction as a request for an update. And
I'll discuss this at the referral section.
Okay, certainly. Thank you. Any other updates or announcements? Okay, seeing none, then to referrals. Councilor Cruz, you potentially have two, one being the item for this, and then you also had one from earlier, is that right?
It was, well, I'll get to that, but I'd like to see the ability to have individual emails listed on our website for people, citizens, to get a hold of counselors directly and not go through the city-generated email address.
So it sounds like this is the same referral that was brought up previously that was voted down. Would council agree with that?
No, it's not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so to change the website to show individual email addresses. So that's the referral, to propose that change.
I'd second that.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Let's see, hands for aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, and for nay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we'll have staff look at the requirements or the ability to put individual email addresses on websites, on the city website.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I speak, and you can call me out of order, but when we add these referrals, we know that we've got a whole line of referrals. I'm just saying that as a reminder. We have a whole line of referrals already on the docket, so like it may not be, I don't know when it will be, but I think we should all remember that when we keep piling referral after referral after referral, especially on stuff we've just recently talked about.
Okay, thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fully in order. Yes, Councilor DeBurr.
I just want to point out that, like tonight, we had a committee meeting in which there was an item on there that was never even referred. It was just made it to the agenda. So yes, there are items that have been waiting on the referral list that I would like to get heard. But there also are times, like tonight with the young boy, where that was never referred, and but yet it was on our committee.
Okay, and that's my prerogative as mayor, to be able to add items to committee. Yes, other comments on this?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Cruz.
To comment on your prerogative, I guess, I've also heard staff say that they take things in order. So I guess circumventing some things that are important, that's your prerogative, I guess. But it is concerning on the process of doing so and the decision to do so. At any rate, the question that I had for Mr. Rogers earlier, thinking I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but limiting the number of businesses in an area, types of businesses, many times cities dictate adult entertainment, not allowed. I've had people approach me to say, should we limit vape shops? And that was to do with the permit we had for tobacco and vaping and so on earlier. We're not allowed, or is there a way that we can do that as a city in an area that citizens say, God, we got so many vape shops, or adult entertainment, or what is allowed and not allowed?
So the general answer is the city can dictate location by zoning, but not use. That's the general answer. I think there may be specific incidents where you've got a public nuisance situation where the city could act, but to start picking winners and losers for otherwise legal commerce could get the city in plenty of hot water.
So the definition of public nuisance with vaping?
Is there a motion here
For referral.
for referral? I can't just have a discussion.
Okay.
I mean, you can do that on your own time with
Okay.
Mr. Rogers, or if you want to do a referral tonight, that's fine.
I think the public likes to hear these things, so thank you, Mr. Mayor.
They would, but certainly if you'd like to do a referral,
Mr.
that's the
Mayor.
process for doing it.
Thank you, Mr.
It's,
Mayor.
it's, I
It's
mean.
not me, it's
Point of
how
order.
everything's supposed to work.
I would like to clarify that it is an open meeting, and this, while a worthy topic, was not on the agenda, so it's something that we can't discuss. It's illegal by state law. I think it's a good topic, and I think if you want to refer or
Okay.
talk it, that's cool, but us just sitting here going on and on and on is actually illegal.
I'd like to make a referral to consider the possibility of limiting vape shops in our zoning ordinance.
Okay.
in certain zones as to be determined by staff.
Does that make sense? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, open for discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
I guess-
Councilor Givfield.
I second it for the discussion opportunity. I think, Councilmember Cruz, it would be best to do the research via email exchange with Attorney Rogers and then bring back your intention as a separate motion or referral. I think I would like some clarification. I believe it's within our rules, if we so chose, to convene a subcommittee meeting immediately following this meeting if items were relevant and discussed in this meeting. Since this one wasn't on the agenda, I wouldn't move that tonight. But we have full control as council to be able to say, hey, we need to refer this to a subcommittee, and we could bring those up if they were urgent. We need to know the rules a little bit better and employ them accurately. But I think the best course of action here would be individual exchange for research and then follow up later.
Yeah, well, there still is that 24-hour notice that we have to provide. We can't just convene
Not
something
for
right after.
an immediate follow-on subcommittee for something that was relevant in that meeting. It's published in open meeting to immediately follow this council meeting. It is legal.
Mr. Rogers? It's not legal.
No.
You mean the next question, Mr. Mayor?
It would have to be published on the agenda. But I have a question. Or I think.
Let me qualify that answer. Exigent circumstances would allow shorter notice than 24 hours to have another public meeting. That is a very, very high standard. Like, has to be done within the hour. Right.
But
I'll follow up with a separate email.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with Councilman Gamfield on the referral. I think the idea is worth hashing out, but I think it should be more hashed out before it's a referral, specifically because the vape shop issue, quote unquote, that I've heard about has come from College Hill, and we've already decided we're not going to look at zoning College Hill. So therefore, we have a contradiction of what we're looking at doing. So I think it's a worthy conversation that should be hashed out outside of here and then with specifics brought to us.
Okay. So would you like to withdraw the referral, or?
I would like to comment that we don't want to proceed rezoning the hill in the entirety that was presented to us. The fact that I want to discuss vape shops density in a small area is different than rezoning the entire hill. That's why I just want to make that point. But I will repeal my referral. Is that the term?
And then do you want to just bring forward some information for the next meeting on the 17th? That'd be great.
Yes, but to Councilman Gansfield's point, I think, are you referring to the next council meeting we can put something on, or the next day?
I do not know for certain, so I have to follow
Okay.
up with
Because
some
the
research of my own.
Because the idea of having a discussion on emails would be easy to have at their next council meeting, a committee meeting, wherever it wants to be.
All right. So we will look forward to having that information. If you could provide it in the packet, that would be ideal, so we'd have it ahead of time. Whatever you find in your research, but that certainly is your call.
Thank you.
Any other referrals tonight? Okay, then with that, I got to stop moving my papers around. With that, for no additional referrals, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.